Right now we're live. Just as my phone starts to ring, it must be a sign. Or I think it's a call from...
Or a reminder.
Someone asking, when's it going to start?
Well,
are we on yet?
Who are you going to vote for? Have you made a reminder to vote?
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I'm so happy it's tomorrow. I don't know. I a couple more ads or some more radio stuff just to make sure my mind is up.
My 8-year-old son was very insightful that said, why do they put all these ads on television? By the end of it, you don't want to vote for anybody. From the mouths of an 8-year-old.
Oh, I agree.
He's like, one of them hops on and says all kinds of bad things about the other one, and then the other one hops on and says all kinds of other bad things. Yep. Welcome to the democratic process.
Okay. It is 5:30, so we will get started. I want to welcome everybody to this GEG Iowa event. We are having awesome tables with the one and only Hank Thiele tonight. Hank's agreed to join us from Illinois. He's the assistant superintendent for technology and learning at Maine 207 schools in Park Ridge. He's also moderator of GEG Chicagoland. I believe that was the first GEG to get started. And then he also has the pleasure of being in the district that was the first ever district to go Google Apps. So he's had quite a bit of experience in the Google Apps arena. Also joining us are Chad from Wave Chad.
Hello.
From Wisconsin, the great state. Which GEG are you part of, Chad?
Southeast Wisconsin, our Google Educator group.
Okay. And Lance Lennon, fellow iTech board member and part of GEG Iowa. So you guys don't need to hear me talk at all. I'm going to turn it over. Awesome tables. If you like Google Forms and want to take them one step further and look at your data, this is the way to do it, or a way to do it. So I'm going to have Hank explain awesome tables. The resources for you all, his presentation is linked in the community or in the event. And what else? Oh, if you have any questions, go ahead. The Q&A is turned on, so if you don't see it and you're viewing the event, if you click on the little 9 boxes, you'll be able to see a Q&A stream, and so feel free to post a question there if you have one for Hank as we get going. All right, it's all you.
Ready?
Go.
I'm going to screen share here. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to just do a run through here. The way I've typically done this presentation is one where you would be following along in the audience and clicking along and doing what I'm doing. But since we're going to do this as a hangout on the air and I have nobody in front of me to pace myself, I'm just going to run through it and show you what I would typically have you do as a member of the audience, and then you could replay it at your own speed later and we could kind of flip this lesson. The link is here at the bottom of the screen. If you want to get back to this presentation, it'll be up. I'm going to be using this presentation a few more times over the next couple of months, so it may continue to adapt and change based on this video here. So if it looks a little different later, you know why. I'll put when it was last updated in the bottom as it is there now. And if you have questions, you can tweet out to me, and I'm happy to get back to you. So with that all being said, let's go through what Awesome Tables is. What this roots out of is Google's visualization engine. And it uses the same tools that Google builds into spreadsheets to build charts and graphs and those kinds of things, or the same tools that build like the summary of forum responses in a Google form when you go into that, but it makes it dynamic on a web page. It uses Google scripts in the background, but don't be afraid of that because you never have to interact with a script. You actually just work with a spreadsheet and a Google Gadget on a Google site. So it's pretty simple. There's some little wizards to walk you through it, and so don't be afraid of anything you're seeing here. Even a beginner could really use this stuff. So let's get into what it actually is and what it looks like. So here's a link to the Awesome Tables Gadget site. Romain Villiard is the gentleman that scripted this, and he's done a lot of great stuff out there, especially for schools. He had one of the first scripts out there that did multiple choice test responses, kind of like Flubaroo. It was called MCQ. So he's been in this space for a while and has a lot of great information out there. Really what this gadget is it provides multiple views of data that is in a spreadsheet through a Google site. And you can see the different things you can do right here on the page. A table, you can post out some maps, Gantt charts for project managing, advanced summary of responses. That's what we're going to look at a lot today. This is kind of like the summary of responses you see in a Google form, but really amped up and interactive, so it's pretty cool. We're going to get into some of these filter types today and how to download data that you've sorted and filtered as a CSV, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we won't have time for today that is even beyond what we're going to look at. So this is the link, though, that'll get you to everything that you need to know. So what I want to do is just throw up here a couple of these. Well, these are his demos that he has up there, so you could browse through these, and you're going to see some examples. I'm going to show you a couple of them of ones where I've used these for some projects here at school. We find ourselves really reaching for awesome tables anytime we want some interactivity with data or analytics or visualization. So these are the samples he gives you to work from. What I would do if I was getting started, which is what we did, is pick one of these. He puts up the sample spreadsheet, he puts up everything that you need to do with instructions, and build his from his example, and then modify yours to match. That's the fastest way to get started. So let's go to a school-centric view. Here's some samples that we've put up. Most of them you'll see are internal use only because they contain data that we probably don't want the public, just tromping through and looking at. But I'm going to give you a quick overview of some of these with some of the pieces that I don't mind sharing. So I'm going to run through each of these samples to give you a shot. So, Stacy, question or no? Oh, okay. All right. So this is Chad's. Here we go. So here's an example of awesome tables in the table view. So what this is, we're using a form to collect resources from teachers around the district and cross-reference them against the different Danielson domains. So you can imagine this spreadsheet really difficult to sort through in a spreadsheet view, but what it allows us to do is to use some tools here to create filters. So this last one, where I have components spelled completely wrong, is a spot where you could then filter down on component, and you can see when they submit this, this is a form with checkboxes, which in your spreadsheet, if you've seen those, makes this terrible cell with all of these values comma separated, and trying to make sense out of them in a spreadsheet is a nightmare. But what Awesome Tables allows you to do is to make every value that's comma separated into a category. So I can now just filter down, I don't know, I'm just going to pick one here. 1C. You can see here it's pulled out a filter, and here's all of the 18 resources that are listed in there that correlate with 1C. You see they aren't only exclusively 1C, they just have 1C as a component in there. So interacting with data is really, really powerful. So let's say I was looking for a document out there that we created on 1C. Here's the documents. You see it quick filters down on that data. Let's say I wanted a document that dealt with 1C and 1A. Now you can see I filtered even further. And let's say I want this for, well, you could see I'm getting pretty limited in my view, but you could continue filtering down on what that is using these things. So that's the idea of how an awesome table works with a table. Let's move to the next quick example for you. This is a student survey on our one-to-one deployment last year and how that went. looking at that, you can see this one is a chart that was made in Google Sheets, and this is how like a Google Sheets chart works. I put this up here because it gives you an idea that the visualizations that happen from Awesome Tables, which is from this point down, use the same type of visualization tool. So here's all of the questions that we asked on this survey to our students. And you can see there's a variety of ways to filter down based on school, based on student responses. All right. So I can go down here, and here is the summary of responses, very similar to what you would see in a regular Google form. However, they're interactive. It's not just a pie chart. It's a pie chart when you hover over it, it tells you how many responses came in. Okay. Depending on the type of response, it gives you some breakdowns. So here was somewhere where they selected from a grid, and it gives you multiple tools. Here's an example of an open text response box, and it builds a word cloud of the responses that came in. So you can kind of see, you know, the overall thing. What was the coolest thing you did with your Chromebook? Nothing. That's always positive to see. Remember, they're high school kids. I prefer this one. Top word about having a computer accessible, easy. There we go. There's a winner. All right, but you can see here then I could go up to the top and I could take a look and see how did West respond to this in comparison to the other two schools. So when I select West, my data, it on the fly draws my dashboards. You can see 19 out of 20, 20, 21, 22. Just redrew all of my dashboards, and now I'm looking at the stuff just for West. You can see here's the West responses. So now I'm looking at this from what did the West kids think about this. And when we get down here, now we see some different things. Okay, maybe not, I don't know. But you can see real quick to analyze the data on the fly, we're working with like a Google form, not so much. All right, so I'm going to quickly fly through a couple other examples. Here's another one. I just want to show you this one because numbers in Awesome Tables, when you do this graph, like dates and those kinds of things, you get numeric sliders for narrowing down date or number ranges. So you can see here's a dashboard we're making for tracking teacher observations at how we're doing. Obviously, we have none that were done in that time frame. But one of the things you'll see here it's drawing out the data from the survey, but you'll see this little button down here. Okay, that little button allows you to download your responses. So an evaluator could go in here and see, they could pick themselves, or we could pick a school's data. Here's a school's data, set of data. And we could then go down here and download that data set and work with it outside of Awesome Tables as a spreadsheet. So that's a cool tool in here. Here's another just sample of dashboards. I don't think there's, I want to show you here. Here's a spot where you could, anywhere there's text, you get these little boxes to search by like a Google search. So that's another filter setting. This one is a Faces and Places directory. So here's one that we built for the district where a staff member can go in and update their stuff. And I'll show you this cool little button in a second. But this is a directory where you can search for somebody and then select them, and their information shows here on the side. And we've built a little cool form here. Here's a button. I'm going to show you how to build this at the very end. When they click on this button, it opens a form for them, and it allows them to update their, it pre-populates with their information that's in the spreadsheet, allows them to change it here. So I could say here, I am also an expert at astronomy. All right, and I can hit submit, and it's going to then go back and update this dashboard in kind of real time, and should add here for me. This is doing some neat spreadsheet gymnastics in the background. Yeah, it depends on how the spreadsheet is going for you that day.
Hey, does it know that it's you because you're logged into your domain account?
Yeah.
So that's why it auto-populates your responses back at you.
Yes, it does. So you can see here it updated here now astronomy, and I updated it in real time. So that's doing some gymnastics in the background there to make that happen. So email me if you want to know how to do that. So that's a directory, and that's an example there. This is another great example of buttons. So here's a spot where teachers or department chairmen have gone in and updated the costs of books. So they find a course and they can update this thing, get to a form that's pre-populated using a button, just like I showed you the update my information stuff. So I'm going to show you how to make those HTML buttons in a little bit, but you see it just pre-populated the course code here. So it's an example. We use these buttons a lot using awesome tables. So here's another couple of examples of cool buttons that we've used. So with those samples that you have there, let's take a look at how to do this. All right, so the documentation, this link here, takes you to the Awesome Tables documentation. If you just Google Awesome Table documentation, this will be the first link that comes up. This is put up by the creator of the Gadget, and it's really good documentation. And what I love that he's done here, you'll see on the side here, he's made it so that anybody can make comments or suggestions. So people ask questions and leave comments here, and he continues to modify and update his documentation based on the questions people are asking. So it's really powerful documentation because he's responsive to our questions. So everything that you're going to see today is spelled out in here with instructions, screenshots, the whole deal. So you really don't need me. You can turn me off now and you're done. So you're going to want that. That's the documentation. What I'm going to work from today, so if you decide to do this after we're done, you can use the same set of sample data that's up there and follow along with what I'm doing. Okay. I shouldn't have closed my documentation because I'm going to refer back to that in a second. All right. So really what you're dealing with here is a set of data, okay, like this one. So here's the set of data that you'll be taken to. Just go File, Make a Copy. All right, and that will allow you to get your own copy of the data to work from, like I've done here. So here's Hank's copy of it. And if you go through my presentation, it's going to walk you through step by step of how to do this, just as his documentation does. And I've given you some screenshots as well. There's two powerful spots where this whole thing works from. One is your spreadsheet, and it's row 2 of your spreadsheet. So what you need to do is insert a row above here, and you're really looking for, well, what happened to row 2? I don't even see it hidden.
This is where Lance tells a joke just to fill the.
Yeah, come on, Lance. All right, well, I just put a new row 2 in there. I don't know what happened to the old row 2. So here's row 2. All right.
Row 3 went away.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Google Spreadsheet don't like me today because I swore at it. All right, so in here, row 2 is where all the magic happens. This is where all your filters go, which are those things that we saw at the top. Let me reopen a tab here. So I'll show you those filters again in a second. So the filters that show up at the top of your awesome table come from row 2 of your spreadsheet. Okay, so right in here is where you're going to put in all of your filter codes. And all of the filter codes are documented on the documentation under, I believe, section 5. It's taking a second to load here because I closed it and now I'm trying to get it back open again. It's a big document. It takes a while to load. But these filters here at the top of your gadget come from the codes you use in row 2. So you take any spreadsheet where you have data like this one and you decide how do you want to filter out this data. Now most of the time you're working, or a lot of time you're working with multiple choice questions or numbers. Multiple choice questions are easy. They're what we call a category filter. And And you can see here in my instructions, this is where they all go. And the most common one to use is this category filter. That's for kind of multiple choice questions. You're giving them a set group of responses to filter down or to choose from. And you got to format it exactly like it shows here. Capital C category, capital F filter, all one word. All right. So if I go in here and I could put this in. All right. So really, all of these are category filters. I picked a nice easy one to work from. This one is a number filter. If it's a number filter, you don't have to put anything in. This one's another category filter. And so is this one. All right, so I gave you a really simple set of data to work from. What I want to do, though, is show you some of the other filters you have to choose from. So let's go through real quick. So string filter is if you have free text in there. So it gives you a little box like this, description. You see that one here. You see here I put field trip name. It's whatever the head of that column is will show here. And then you get a little box to type stuff in, and then it'll search down on it. See, it filters as you type it in. And it's sorting down on it. Okay? So that's how a string filter works. And the data is usually displayed in a word cloud. And that's like the one I showed you before. The next one is this number range filter. So this is that number slider. It'll happen automatically in a numeric column, but sometimes you're going to have a column you want to display, but you don't want to provide a filter, which is pretty common. So let's say we wanted to display this, but we didn't want people to be able to filter down by age. Just see it. Then you would put in the word no filter, all one word. And now this will not display. I'm going to leave it in there so you can see once we get it up there how it looks. Let's say you have something in here, you want them to filter by it, but you don't want it to be displayed. So I want them to be able to filter down by education, but I don't want to see that in my table. Okay? I could put the word hidden. Now, hidden makes it so there's still going to be a filter there for the education. Oh, I need my filter type. Sorry. Category filter space dash space. You got to remember space dash space. It's got to be just like it shows here. Will now provide a category filter and it'll be hidden. If I wanted the data to be completely hidden, I would just put in the word hidden.
So did you do that, for example, like when you were picking which school? You could filter by school, but it didn't display as one of the...
display it as one of the options. So like here, I have like this field trip name, field trip approved, date of trip. This trip details button, I'm hiding that from the filter because I don't want you to filter down by the button, right? But I'm showing it down here below. So I use no filter on this column that says trip details. So that's kind of how it works. All of these filters here are under, I lied, thought it was under 5, it's under 2.3. All right, so in his documentation under 2.3 is his explanation of all of the different filters, a couple of issues that have popped up that people have discovered over time, so some helpers in there, and how each of the different filters work. My favorite one ever is this one. And let's get there in a second. So I'll get to that one in a second. So category filter we talked about. This is your multiple choices type questions. Date filter, self-explanatory. This is my favorite, CSV filter. A lot of times when we create forms with multiple choice responses, or I'm sorry, with checkboxes. Let's see if I can quickly create a form. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. When you choose one that's checkboxes, come on. right, this checkbox option, and you put in a question. Each one of these options that you put in you can select multiple ones, right? So if we go to a live form that looks like this, you get the option to select A, B, and C. When you submit that option and you look at it in a spreadsheet, someday, what it's going to do is it's going to put all those values in, and they're going to comma separate them. And that gets to be a nightmare when you're doing data analytics, because if you're trying to make sense of this someday when it populates, what you have to do is a lot of like if statements to sort out what's in here, right? So I want to know the answers that contain A, right? So I'd put an A here, and I'd say, you know, if, actually I'd have to do a whole equal search to find out if A is in there, and I have to write out this full, you know, search for this. If it contains that, then give me a value, right? Or I have to do a pivot table and do filters and those kinds of things. And then it gets even more complex when I want ones that are, well, A, B, C is pretty easy, but what about the ABs and then the ACs? Now it starts to get to be a nightmare to really sort all that out. Awesome Tables offers this CSV filter that breaks each comma separated value into an option in a drop-down list, which makes working with data super simple. So if you're ever using a form that looks like this with the checkboxes to make sense out of it, you're going to want Awesome Tables with the CSV filter. And you see this is how you type it in to your box. Lowercase CSV, uppercase filter, all one word. All right, that's what's going to go into row 2. All right, so that's how you set up. Let's see if I got through them all. I think I did.
And then those, Hank, it'll automatically, it'll regraph the data then, depending on how. Okay.
Yep. So let's take a look here. Here's my data. So now let's get this stuff onto a Google Sheet in a way that you can interact with it. So, or a Google, not sheet, a Google site, because that's the other piece. So we have our Google Sheet all set up now. Now what we want to do is create a Google site. I went to sites.google.com. I created this guy. This is just a blank site with nothing on it. You go ahead and edit that page and go to Insert. And what you're going to insert is from More Gadgets. You're going to click right here. And you're going to look for something called Awesome, because that's what it is. All right, the first one that comes up is this Awesome Table. You select it, and up will come this cool little interface. I'll tell you right now, the most important button on this interface is the green Save button, because you're always going to forget to click it like I always do. Okay, so I'm warning you right now, click Save. It's unlike the other Google tools where you don't. All right, so here's our spreadsheet. Here's our site with our little gadget controls, and you just walk through what's on here. So the first question, Google Sheet URL. Where do I find that? Well, every document in Google has its own unique URL. It's up here in the URL bar at the top. And you just want to grab that whole guy and copy it. You want to go back to your Awesome Tables and paste it in. And then what sheet is it on? Well, in my sample, it's sheet 1. A lot of times it'll be form responses 1. You got to type it in exactly as the sheet says down here. A little trick, if it's really long, double click on the sheet name and then you can get in here and copy that. All right, so I do that all the time, especially when this thing is like a mile long in the name. So you get in there, you put the sheet in there. It happens to be sheet 1, pretty easy. Range is what range are you displaying of your spreadsheet. A1 is the top corner. That's what I want. And then I want to go all the way through I. Actually, I don't because I hid it. So let's flip some stuff around. Let's make male, female hidden. Let's make this one a category filter. All right. So I'm going to show A through I. That's my range. And if I don't put a number after I, that means show me everything from A1 in the top corner through I, and I'm not saying there's a limit on I. I want it to go to the last I. So that's really important if you're graphing stuff off of a form where data is going to continue to come in. You don't want to put a limit on that. Unless you do. Maybe there's a section of the data you want to graph. Then you would put a limit on it. Like I want to graph the first 12 rows. That'd be A1 through I12. Okay? Next box is an important one. Do you want them to be able to download the data they work with? If you want to keep it confidential and live on the screen, you leave that unchecked. Then nobody can take your data off the screen. But maybe like the example I gave you, you want people to be able to take their subset of data and leave with it and do stuff with it. Then you would check that box. It's really important once you have all of this stuff to click the green Save button. Click it often, all right? Now, how big do you want this thing to be? I always include a scroll bar. I never include a border or display the title because I think they're ugly. All right, save. Then view, this tells you what are the different kinds of ways you're going to view this data. Okay, so we're going to start out with a table view. So it's going to show our spreadsheet in a pretty way. Okay, so I'm going to start with the table. And then you can get into different advanced formats here, but I'm not going to mess with that right now. So save that. You could preview it. I'm just going to hit OK. You always get this little gray box that means your gadget's waiting for you to hit save. When you hit save, your gadget will automatically appear. So here we go. Here's my gadget. It's a pretty table with all my filters at the top. You'll see that the ones that I have hidden aren't showing. Okay, I have 149 records in this table based on what I have here. And then if I click these things, it's going to filter down on them. Okay, so I'm flipping through all that data. We should see that the things I have put here are filtered the way I told them to be. So here they all are. I don't know, education. Oh, I hit age. So here's the important part. Let's say I want age to show back up. I have it as no filter, so you don't see it, right? Age isn't up here at the top. I'm like, oh, well, I want age. So I go back here, I delete that. Then I go back to my site and I refresh it, which might take a second. It's going to refresh the site with the new filters based on how I sorted them out there before. So now I have an age slider. So now I can filter down my data based on my age. Okay. What you're seeing here is, let's see. Let's go in and edit my. Something goofy's happened here because I have thousands of rows of data. I'm only showing 149 here. So let's figure out what's going on in my gadget. So in my view here, you'll see I'm displaying only 15 items per page. I think there's probably a limit on the number of pages that are going to be there. So if I made this like 1,000 items on my page, hit save. If you get something that doesn't look right, you didn't click save most of the time. All right, so here it is. It's going to redraw it out. 150 pages now with 1,000 items on a page or something like that. So it's limiting down on how many rows of data I'm saying to show there. So anyways, where was I going with this? All right, so these all show here based on what I've put in here. Let's say I wanted this now to be text. I could do string filter. This will change it from being a category to being free text. I just go back, reload my page, and it's going to redraw out my types of filters that are on here.
What if you have a column that you want to display but don't want to filter?
You put in the word no filter. So let's say I want to display the age, but I don't want people to be able to filter down on it. And the word no filter, all together one word, capital N, capital F.
Okay.
And now if I go back and reload my page, you'll see the age.
I saw hidden.
Go away. So now
There
age isn't an option to filter down by, but it still shows over here in the responses.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So I can flip them back and forth. So no filter removes it. Hidden removes it from. So let's say I don't want them to see that, but I want them to be able to filter on it. Right? So I don't want them to see that displayed anywhere, but still want it as a filter. I make it hidden. Now the data won't be shown here in the table. However, I could filter down on it. So maybe I don't want people to know what these individual responses were by age. So I'd have to narrow down by age to find that out. So right now there's 9 people ages 23 to 36. I can't see which ones of these are associated with age 23 to 36. I just know they're in that range, right? So gets rid of some of that. I can still filter by it, but I can't tell who responded what. All right. So other cool stuff in here that you should know. Let's go back in. So this is looking at it in a table view. Let's take a look at this as a, so I'm going to edit the page, edit the properties of the gadget. Now let's look at this as the form response view, right? So this is going to be similar to like when you take a look at a form, like this one that I filled out. I have one response, awesome. And if you go to the summary of responses, you're used to seeing these kinds of things, right? So the advanced summary of responses is like that hopped up on Monster Energy drink. So here's your advanced summary of responses. Save that bad boy. Remember, hit the green save button. All right. So save that. Save your page. And now it's going to redraw out my data. See, building dashboard, creating chart 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So here is that data now graphed out rather than a table. And I can now narrow down on ages 23 to 49, and you see it redraws my graphs. I could say ages 23 to 49 that do not use a computer anywhere. Okay, yet they don't use a computer anywhere, but yet they still have 83% of that group, 5 people, huge sample size, have done that. So you can see how this is going to be really powerful. All right.
Hank, I have a question with this. So somebody asked me today, they forgot to clear their form, so they have a bunch of old responses, and can you filter them by date? So I went from this date to the current date, and then
you could leave the timestamp as the date field here. You could do it that way. A much more powerful way to do that would be use the query function.
Okay.
So I would just go to another sheet. So let's say I'm going to do a query here. And then I'd use the query sheet to display off of. So let's put in a new sheet. I don't know why my
Because I still want my summary of everybody for the last 2 years in the same one. But...
Right. So I have copy of sheet 1 here.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I shouldn't have done a copy of sheet 1. Let me get rid of that. All right. So let's say that this copy of sheet 1 is going to be a subset of the data that I want to display for everybody. There's a couple of ways you can do this. One, this is the advanced session. So one is that you could build the query in here. So if you know how to write queries, you can go into advanced parameters, and you could put in a query that filters down your data to that date range right here.
Okay.
Which is only super advanced users only. The other thing you could do, let's say I wanted to query down on people that said yes to A, which would be like querying down on a time range.
Right.
Example you gave me. I'd use the query function, So I would say equals query. The data that I'm looking at is what goes in next. So I'm looking at all of this data, sheet 1, A through I, and then I want to select everything because I want all of my data to be returned, but only where A equals, and I said what, yes?
Yes.
Yes. So there's a whole bunch of stuff out there on how to write queries.
Right.
But that's basically what you would do, and of course I did something wrong. Where A equals, yeah, select sheet 1. Okay, of course it's not working for me.
Okay.
But I would query this out here. Overwrite data in A3. Oh, there is something in A3. I don't know where A3 is. All right, let's just put it here. So it's not liking me, but so you do this. I've got something messed up.
Okay, so then you build the query here, and then you can do an awesome table from this.
Off of sheet 2. Yeah, or whatever. This one's not playing nice, but that's how I typically do it, is I do multiple sheets with queries to narrow down, or even to, because one of the cool things you can do with the query is instead of selecting star, you can put them in a different order. So I could do B, comma, A, comma, D, comma, I, and that's going to be the order of the columns reorganized. So I restructure tables that way and then display this one with the columns in this order. Because we all know when you start messing around with columns from where the forms come in, it gets bad, right? If you start moving this stuff around. So I use queries to move stuff to other sheets, and then I display the other sheet the way I want it to look. All right, so those are some advanced tips for you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yep, no, that's all right. All right, so there's a couple other tips here. Make sure there's two pieces of sharing here. There's the sharing of the site and the sharing of the document. For people to see, or the spreadsheet, for people to see the data, they have to have rights to view the spreadsheet. They also have to have rights to view the website. So I use a combination of, a lot of times, page level permissions and spreadsheet permissions to decide who gets to see what chunk of data. So let's say I wanted Stacy to see this page, and I wanted Lance to see this page, page 2. That's Lance data. I could go in here and I could set page level permissions on page 2 so that only Lance can see this tab or this page, and Stacy cannot. And we control a lot of the flow of data that way. So maybe I give them both rights to view this sheet, but I only let them interact with the data here. So that's some ways to work with it. So make sure that your sharing is set up. If people can't see your data, it's most likely a sharing setting. So we went through this, adding the gadget to your site. Under More Gadgets, Awesome Tables, and setting it up. So this walks you through how to do all of this stuff. Remember to click Save. I'm serious. Remember to click Save. All right. Your filters show up for modifying the views. We've been through that. All right, let's get into the last advanced thing here that I have in 2 minutes. All right, one of the cool things to do is pre-populating a form with a URL, or using a URL to get a pre-populated form. So let's say I'm having people fill out this form. Here's the live form. This was in some of the examples I gave you before, like this. All right, here's somebody needs to do something here, fill out a form, but I want them to go to this form, and I want to have some stuff there already for them. Like this, you see here it says field trip name, do not modify. This is some unique identifier that's allowing me to track changes across a sheet. I want this to show up with their data in there. Or like what you saw in the 207 Faces and Places directory, I wanted the form to pre-populate with their information in it. Okay, one of the ways you can do this is to use in forms under form responses, you can get this pre-filled URL. All right. Pre-filled URL allows you to go to your form and interact with it. So I want this to fill out by default. Most people are going to choose going over. I don't know why, but in this example. All right, so I want it to default to going over. I hit to submit, and now when I circulate my form, I can send out this link instead of the link to the live form, and it's going to come with, if we look in this thing, you see this, it's really hard to see probably on the screen, but this text that's in here ends with this and entry dot number equals going over. That tells the form to pre-populate that. You'll see if I open this up in a new tab, pre-slugged for me will be going over. You see it's already slugged when you load the page rather than this being blank when you go to the typical live form. See, if we go to the live form, nothing will be slugged for that question. So we use this a lot for buttons where we want to push information in with what we know, and we want them to then modify the rest. Okay? So we build these buttons to display information, or the other thing we love to use buttons for, if we go back to this example, is like here is a field trip request. When somebody submitted this request, we used AutoCrat to build a document that has all of the trip details in it. We want them to click on this button and take them to the Google document that contains those trip details. So when they click here, you see that button opens this link. That link takes them to this document that has this information on it. That button could take them anywhere. It could be a website, it could be a doc, it could be anything on the web, but instead of putting like a link here that's some long HTML link, it instead takes you, it just shows this button that says details, and it takes you there. It could say website, it could say resource, whatever you want it to say. All right, so let me show you how to do pre-populated form links based on a spreadsheet real quick in my -1 minute, and I'm going to show you how to do a quick HTML button. So in my spreadsheet, I've given you the stuff to find this. So you get this pre-populated URL, and what you want to do is work with the text in a document. My pro tip for you here is all quotation marks are not the same. Quotation marks in Google Docs are different from quotation marks in a spreadsheet. So you'll see here, if we're going to go play around with this pre-filled URL in a document or in a spreadsheet, you got to pay attention to the quotation marks. I'll show you what I mean here in a second. I know I'm moving fast. All right, so here's that going over document where I submitted that I was going over. Okay. This here is my this over here is the text from my pre-filled URL. And if I double click in it here, well, that's a bad example because I already messed with it. But let me go here. Here's my pre-filled URL. Let's put this in. So let's say I want this to pre-populate with somebody's email address and going over. So here it'll give me this pre-populated, pre-filled responses. Come on, bad boy. All right, so what that looks like in my spreadsheet, sorry to make you dizzy there, is this. So it's this whole long link. And you can see it says right here, here is the pre-filled email address. Here is the pre-filled going over. Okay? So let's say I want to make this so that it's not going to fill in what I submitted right now. It's going to submit what each person submitted. So the next person's going to submit see some data validation there? So I want to build a link with what they submitted in it. So I want the spreadsheet to populate with their data. So here's another one that's submitted. Here's the link that I want to fill in. And you'll see, if you look at this, it might be really hard to see. But here's the link from the Google form up until a point where I'm saying replace this pre-filled data where it said this. I want to replace it with the data from the spreadsheet, not what each person submitted, not what I pre-filled with. So instead, I put in this little equal sign, equals this bad boy, and I replaced the pre-filled data with B2. So fill it with this, and then fill your choice with C2. All right, so when I paste all that stuff together, it's going to make a whole different response. And if you look at it here, it did it. So when I click on it, I see the formula. When I look at it, you can see it says fill, and it's made this link. docs.google.com, entry Thiele, main207.org, and entry equals going over. Now when I copy this formula down to the next one, it's going to be a pre-filled response with an email, henrythiele@gmail.com, and their choice was going under. You see? So I just dynamically created a link to this pre-filled form. If I copy that and throw it in a URL, you'll see it just now pre-populated with my email address and the option I had checked before. So I could send back to everybody using a form emailer, hey, this was your other response. If you want to change it, go ahead, or however you want that to work, and it would come right out of this. All right? So I could also use that. If they were going to work in the spreadsheet, I could just use the hyperlink formula and say, give me a hyperlink, use the text D2, and I want it to say update form. All right, so that works if I'm working on a spreadsheet, but as Chad found out, it doesn't work if you're working in awesome tables because it doesn't know how to handle this formula that says hyperlink. What you need for it to work on a table like this to be an interactive button is some HTML code. So what I gave you in here to make that HTML code is this link that just disappeared to this document that shows you here's the HTML code that you want to base yours off of. Okay? So you put this whole formula in a cell, and here's what each chunk means. Concatenate puts it all together. The first part is part of your button style. That's this stuff up through where it says D2 in green. D2 in green is the cell reference that has your form link, which we just talked about. The rest is button style. So if you want to change colors of your button, size, all that stuff, that's in this HTML junk. And then the last chunk is what do you want the button to say. Okay, so here's update form. All right. So if I go back to my form, all right, so here it is. Here's that chunk of stuff. Concatenate all of this. Reference something in here. Come on. All right. So here's the whole thing, and where's my cell reference? I got rid of it. All right, well, let me go back and grab it. Oh, let me show you the thing I was warning you about as well. Back in here where we were working in our sample code, if you modify in here and you start changing stuff around, a quote in Docs is not equal to a quote in spreadsheets. So if you start messing around in here and then you're like, oh, I'm going to put this quote like right here, that quote will be a different quote. It's this, looks like this, not like that. So if you start messing with code in a Google Doc, copy and paste your quotes from your spreadsheet. Use that as your template to move things. I don't know why this didn't come over well, but let's see what happens. I think I was messing with it before you folks got here. Oh, it has the reference there, D2. All right. Oh, yeah, of course it does. So let me show you with wrapped text here. See what it did? So here's the first part of my stuff. Reference this link, which is this link here, and build out a button. So let me show you this on a awesome table.
So then, Hank, when you go through and do this, you ultimately hide the actual link column just because you have the button for it?
Yep.
Okay.
I hide it from the filter.
Right, that's what, yeah.
So let's just put a couple of category filters in here real quick. I'm going to hide everything else. This, I'm going to do no filter. So I'm going to hide. All right. So I'm going to go replace my awesome table. I'm going to use this instead. All right. Or here, I'll do on the Lance data one. Insert, more gadgets. I'm going to add that in there. That one, form responses one. No, I'm getting too many things open. There we go. So this is form responses space 1. So that's what's going to go in this one. Form responses 1. My stuff I want to show is going to be A through F. Save. All right. My view is going to be a table, so we're good. Okay. So you can see here, now here's my cool little button. This is going to allow me to update form. Why did only one show? Because I didn't copy down my formula into the second one. All right. So you want to use scripts like, or not scripts, add-ons like copy down and that kind of stuff in forms to build these dynamically. So if I refresh this now, here's my stuff. Ah, what happened? Go away. Now you can see it has that data in there. So that's how you build these buttons so people can interact with the stuff on your table. There's a lot more to it to build dynamic stuff that changes on the fly, but that would be an advanced, super advanced session. So I'm way out of time for today by 15 minutes, but here's how you get to this presentation. Questions that you guys might have that I can answer quickly.
No, I just want to say thank you, Hank. That was beyond awesome. I got to go to a football playoff game tonight. My daughter's getting all antsy that they'll sell out. So thank you very much.
Get out of here, Lance. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you. Have a great night, guys.
All right, see you, Lance.
Thanks, Lance. Thanks, Hank. I know I have some other questions. We might have to do this again in a month or two.
Sure.
Part 2 after people get some time to play with it.
Yeah. Part 2 is the stuff that is the dynamic redrawing of data based on lookups and that kind of stuff. And
I know another question I had for you is about the bar graphs.
Yeah.
Too. But we can do that in the more geeky session.
Yeah, that's just using. Yeah, that's using stuff in Sheets.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. I know you have a.
All right, thanks for having me. Yeah, I got to head to a board meeting, so good to see you guys, and thanks for having me again.
I'm sure you'd much rather go to the board meeting.
Oh yeah, on my way.
Super excited. All right, I'm going to end the broadcast now. Hank's contact information is there. Thanks, you guys.